The Knuckles mountain range, encompassing high mountain peaks persistently covered with cold mist clouds, is seen to a distant viewer as depicting the knuckles of a closed palm, and therefore is rightly named Knuckles Mountain Range. This world-famous breathtaking range of mountains encloses the Central Hills with about 35 mountain peaks. There are 3 major river basins being fed by the Knuckles Mountain Range, which inherits both monsoons. Colorful trees, vines and foliage, and various landscapes such as mountain peaks, cliffs, plains and beautiful landscapes that are not seen anywhere else in the island can be seen in this forest. Knuckles is home to a large number of rare species of flora and fauna endemic to Sri Lanka and is a paradise second to none in biodiversity. Time keeps moving. Climate change is the greatest challenge encompassing the entire planet today. Sri Lanka is also facing the adverse effects of these extreme conditions. Accordingly, due to the environmental conditions such as heavy rains and increase in temperatures, droughts, floods and landslides are seen to be on the rise. As a region affected severely due to this change, the upstream catchment areas and the downstream areas of the lovely Knuckles Mountain region as well as the community are being threatened and endangered day by day. Knuckles Conservation Forest (KCF) is a crucial geographical area in the project site. The Knuckles region is a breathtaking landscape consisting of mountains, valleys and variety of ecosystems and species. Its importance is reflected in the level of protection and international recognition that has been accorded at various times. The Knuckles Conservation Forest, together with the Peak Wilderness Protection Area and Horton Plains National Park, collectively referred to as the Central Highlands of Sri Lanka, was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. In 2000, the Knuckles area was declared a conservation forest by the Forest Department, and in 2007, its buffer zone was declared as an environmental protection area under the National Environmental Act. The project area links a critical climate-sensitive upstream catchment referred collectively as the Knuckles area with the highly climate vulnerable downstream command area to which it supplies irrigation water. Climate change is impacting Sri Lanka through changes in rainfall, temperature and wind. The people and economy of Sri Lanka are heavily dependent on water from highlands for irrigation, domestic and industrial use and electricity generation. The national water collection and delivery system is threatened by reservoirs silting up at alarming rates. Climate change aggravating rainfall disparities across the country. The highland catchments house key biodiversity hotspots as well as important agricultural and forest productions that are threatened by land degradation, and there is a need to adapt to shifting climatic patterns, including changes to flowering times of key export crops. The immediate need to restore and sustainably manage land in the upper watershed areas to control sediment flow and rehabilitate failing parts of the water storage and distribution network, including making efficient use of water in agricultural production, has been recognized. This requires a major change in the way the highlands and upper catchments are managed, both in technical, conservation and landscape management and behavioral community to agency functions terms. Loss of soil carbon, often associated with unsustainable agricultural practices and exacerbated by erosion of topsoil, is now seen as a global problem undermining soil health, water retention and fertility. Climate change-induced rainfall intensity-driven erosion negative impacts includes decline in soil fertility, reduction in soil depth, rapid siltation of hydropower reservoirs, sedimentation in agricultural lands, sedimentation in rivers and floods in the lowlands, increasing frequency of landslides, damage to the infrastructure, and the change of water quality of waterways and ecological systems. The project will not only enhance the ability of populations, especially that of the smallholder subsistence farmers, to address climate-induced shortages of irrigation and drinking water by improving the resilience of farm and land management practices and climate-proofing the underlying ecosystems in the Knuckles, Abanganga, highlands and lowlands, but also will facilitate to ensure protection of world key biodiversity hotspots. In order to face these challenges, the Ministry of Irrigation in Sri Lanka and the International Center for Research in Agroforestry together will implement a 6-year project on strengthening climate resilience of subsistence farmers and agricultural plantation communities of the Knuckles mountain range, or Knuckles GCF Project. For this purpose, the Green Climate Fund is investing $39.7 million American dollars, and the Sri Lankan government is investing $9.2 million American dollars, the total being $48.9 million American dollars. This project is being implemented focusing the objective of generating climate-resilient livelihoods and improving food security for subsistence farmers and plantations, improving the upland canopy structure and reducing land degradation to minimize droughts and siltation of tanks, enhancing access to technologies and innovative best practices for area-based tourism, agriculture and services, empowering youth and communities for innovative eco-friendly employment, finance and digital leadership, harnessing global and traditional knowledge via multi-sector digital platforms to facilitate the climate resilience. In order to achieve these objectives, the project is implemented along 3 major components. Accordingly, the first component is improving land and water management. The second component is sustaining improved land management through the establishment of sustainable financing mechanism. The component 2 has 2 outputs as to upgrade and more efficient green value chains and penetration of new markets and payment for ecosystem services (PES) mechanism. Through the third component, institutional capacity will be strengthened in order to build adaptive capacity of agricultural communities to climate change and making their livelihood and landscapes more resilient. Within the upstream catchment area and the downstream area associated with the Knuckles mountain range covered by this project, there will be over 1.3 million people, including 46,000 Samruddhi beneficiaries receiving direct and indirect benefits. 61,174 farm households and plantation families will benefit from water management and climate-adapted agricultural practices. 622,000 people living downstream will enjoy water harvested in the upstream and adopt efficient water use practices in paddy and other field crops. 383,000 people living in upstream area will have access to tourism, area-based agriculture and value-added marketing opportunities. Rehabilitation of over 150 abandoned rural tank anechots in mountainous areas alone and strengthening of water supply for new irrigation systems, rehabilitation of more than 150 rural tank anechots and restoration of groundwater will be done. 58,000 hectares of forest and wildlife conservation areas will be protected. 411,564 hectares of forest landscapes will be protected and strengthened in response to climate variability and change. 130,943 hectares of paddy will be cultivated to increase cropping intensity of irrigated rice both upstream and downstream. 2,500 local entrepreneurs will benefit from sustainable value chain upgrading options. 50% of erosion prevalence will be reduced across upstream catchments with conservation measures to minimize erosion and sedimentation in reservoirs and tanks, including Moragahakamda multi-purpose irrigation scheme. 15,000 hectares of forest reserves will also be improved with quality green cover to enhance cloud capturing and minimize soil erosion in degraded lands, including plantation forests. One of the main objectives of the project is to increase green cover and reduce soil erosion, and the forest cover in mountainous areas will act as a barrier, increasing the ability to capture clouds. This will simply be the strongest factor in causing rain to occur naturally. For the purpose of achieving the above objectives, the project will use public sector agriculture, plantations, irrigation, energy tourism, exports, forest resources and wildlife, as well as private sector and international organizations as its stakeholders. This project aiming to mitigate the effects of climate change and adaptation within the Knuckles mountain range in the beautiful Dumbara Valley and the region that feeds on it, making the community greatly resilient to these climate-driven challenges and developing their livelihoods, will become a true dawn not only to this region but also to the life of the community living in the sustainably developed ecosystem rich in biodiversity and food security. The National Adaptation Plan 2016-2025 highlights adverse effects of climate change in Sri Lanka, including the consequences of rising temperatures, erratic high-intensity rainfall, flash floods, landslides, and rising sea levels, critically affecting most economic sectors and depriving the nation and its people of livelihoods. The NAP identifies adaptation options and performance indicators for the 9 identified most vulnerable sectors. This project directly addresses 4 of the 9 vulnerable sectors: food security, water resources, ecosystems, and biodiversity and export development. Successful implementation of this project will not only facilitate to achieve above adaptation measures, but also, most importantly, immensely contribute to strengthen climate resilience of all creatures of the nature.